Hello, everyone. My name is Isabel, and I'm going to be talking to you today about cultural evolution as manifested through the notions of cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation. I really wanted to explore notions of cultural evolution as seen um, through experiences of people who have different types of backgrounds. And so I had come across a specific video on Instagram a few months ago of this Mexican group. They're actually American born, ranging from the ages of 16 to 25. And I just wanted to kind of explore comments that they made in an interview that resulted in a lot of backlash from audience members. And they were subject to cancel culture, and so I just wanted to talk about that with you guys a little bit more, bring my perspective to it, and then also invoke some of the readings that I did for our annotated bibliography. I'm very excited to share this with you guys as I was able to learn so much while completing this research. Okay, so let's go ahead and just begin. This group is named Yaritza y su Esencia. They are an American-born music group. This is the lead singer. The lead singer is accompanied by both of her brothers. The majority of their sound is typical of Mexican regional music. It's called sereno, like sereno. Made what could be considered derogatory comments about Mexico City and Mexican food. I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys this Instagram reel, which is the video that actually incited this research.
Comida mexicana, una comida lo más picante que puede. Sí, me encanta. Me encanta.
Bueno, me gusta cuando me levanto, como me estoy durmiendo, porque me escuchan como los charros y las sirenas de los policías y todo. Pero
No me gusta mucho la comida. Me gusta más de donde vivimos. Allá en Washington, la neta, le dan un sabor que sí pica y sabe bueno.
My house is the second best place for tacos. That place called El Taconazo en Coatzacoalcos is the best cochinita tacos in the world.
depende de quién esté preparado, pero los tamales, cuando son buenos, son insuperables.
Y también es la comida, porque yo soy del estado y pues casi nomás como chicken, ajá, puras como alas. Que no, también que me enseñan chile, no me gusta nada de eso, todo nomás. Quiero decir que la soda aquí está como, no sé si tiene menos azúcar o gas, pero sabe diferente que allá, porque allá tiene bien mucho gas, como te quema la garganta más ahí.
So this video right here is actually an interview that they did with this media platform in Mexico City. I guess the story behind it is that they had just arrived into Mexico City. They were tired from traveling and doing multiple interviews because they kind of blew up in Mexico in the past year or so. I'm not too sure. This is the first time that I ever heard of this group from this Instagram reel that was shared by this content creator on Instagram called Comidas de Mexico. And so what they do is they highlight Mexican food there. And I've gotten many recipes from this content creator. And so I definitely do appreciate what they do. And so when I first saw this, I was offended as well, just because I am myself a Mexican American. But we'll get into that a little bit later. We do have to pay attention to the rhetoric that is surrounding this post. They show Amber Heard speaking perfect Spanish, talking about how much she loves tacos. And, there's other artists there like Salma Hayek. Belinda's a very famous Mexican artist as well as Eva Longoria. So they showed both people from Mexico as well as people from America appreciating the Mexican culture as one does when enjoying the cuisine. And these comments here definitely, so this one right here, even though it's in Spanish, it says that they have the color of wet mud, and that they are rejecting their roots and they are an embarrassment to Mexicans. This one is saying, the second one is saying Mexican food is the best. And then this other person is highlighting the fact that Amber Heard can speak Spanish perfectly. And this one right here is saying that they are gringos with masquerading as Mexicans. This is very insulting stuff. So you can see that the majority of people that came into contact with this content were definitely offended by these comments. And I really can't blame them, because I myself was also very offended as well, because it reminded me of those socio-historical relationships that I have with Mexico. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and all of my family is in Mexico, and we would go often, once or twice a month, every month, until I probably turned 18 years old. And so I remembered having a really hard time with it being taken seriously, even by my family. And so whenever I started exploring this idea and how offensive these comments were and how offended I was about those comments, I had to really ask myself, what was it that I was really upset about, And so I did add this video for you guys. I'm not going to play the video just because I'm uploading this to YouTube. And if I play this song, then you guys won't be able to view. I think that they'll like remove my video or something because of copywritten content is going to be added on there. I did want to bring attention to this quote from Thomas Rickards' book, Ambient Rhetoric, where he states that perception, language, and the forms of cultural intelligibility from where we work collude to tell us the object before us is a pen, but whatever the object is in itself is not a pen for a dog or an ant. And so for us, whenever we see this music video here, we will make these connotations, we will make these merging of ideas and really identify what these people are representing rhetorically for a cultural group. And then we see how they represented the cultural group in the other video from Instagram, where they were being compared to all of these other very famous and very wealthy artists, because I think that part of what the interview was stating was that they felt like America was better. Specifically in that interview, one of them says that they prefer the seasoning used in Washington State. So these kids are from Yakima Valley in Washington State. They've actually were raised very similar to people in Mexico that aren't part of the city. So like out in like the villages and very agricultural upbringing. So they do have a socio-historical relationship with the culture as it is handed down to them from their parents, as we will see here in the next slide. McGrath states that it seems natural to be suspicious of profit. I ended up realizing this while having a conversation with my partner about why there was that offense, and talking back to having those socio-historical relationships with the culture myself. I realized that for me, speaking correct Spanish and showing respect for the culture and the food. They also, in that video, they also talked about not liking Coke from Mexico. And growing up, it was always like, oh, Mexico has the best Coke, it's used with real cane sugar. So it's one of those things that they were really not necessarily, I don't think they meant to attack these staples of Mexican culture, but they did refer to them in ways that aren't appreciative. And so the accepted behaviors that are passed down from our parents can be noted by this example of a phylogenetic tree. So there, if you can see here, there is a root that allows us to find our way into different branches, and from like we create nodes and things like that. And so that is very reminiscent of Selena Quintanilla, who ended up creating a node with her music back in the 90s, where she was able to fuse the cultures of Texas and Mexico in what is now known as Tex-Mex. We see a lot of restaurants and a lot of music too that is very heavily influenced by the node that was created by Selena. So if a child is influenced by their parents' teachings of the traditions of culture and what is right and what is wrong, we are also influenced by these outside factors that have nothing to do with family. This idea is heavily explored by Alan Love and William Wimsatt in their book Beyond the Meme. That really goes into detail about the mimetic way that we are influenced by that which isn't a family member. So the term meme was coined back in 1970 by somebody named like Richard Dawkins, I believe. And he was trying to emphasize the mimetic way that influence in culture and social practice is um, spread throughout a society in the same way that a gene works in your DNA, in your genetic code. And so this idea of transmission and transfer is also can also be recognized in cultural practice. And so there is also, I wanted to also reference this article, The Evolution of Culture from Primate Social Learning to Human Culture, that was written by Laureano Castro and Miguel Toro. This article is heavily biologic, but they do touch on these ideas of in primates they were seeing behavior being either approved or disproved by their parents. And so it was also types of behaviors that we see happening in human beings, as your parent is going to show you what is right and what is wrong and what desired behaviors should be propagated. So if we think about Selena Quintanilla's ability to create a node in the musical industry, we can also note the behaviors that our music members, that Yaritza y su Esencia, they showed in that interview. They did get a lot of backlash. So if we are to believe that we are products of our culture, then the culture has to tell us when we are acting inappropriately or when behaviors need to be rejected. So the propagation of behaviors are not just vertical transmissions as explained by Love and Wismat, but also horizontal, where a person that isn't from your family, or it hasn't really been there for your core memories, can really affect the way that you manifest your social practices. So there was rhetorical implications of the interviews for social media. Some people believe that they were kind of baited into making these types of statements regarding Mexico. Some people believe that they were answering honestly, and the fact that some of them don't like chili and would prefer to eat chicken wings isn't a derogatory statement towards a whole nation or towards a whole cultural community, but it's just them being honest about the things that they like and that they don't like. They did grow up in very small town of Yakima Valley that is extremely agricultural. It's very different from the metropolis that is Mexico City. In the interview, they do state that the lead singer says that she doesn't really like Mexico because She hears the sirens and cars like will wake her up, and she's just not really used to that. The older brother, who is 25 years old, was actually born in Mexico. They immigrated to Yakima Valley, Washington, and then whenever they went viral from a TikTok video, I guess he was granted a working visa but had to live in Mexico for a few months. So when they all went to Mexico to meet him, that was like uh, their initial reaction to being out there. The 25-year-old specifies that he doesn't like the food, that he doesn't like the flavor of it, that he thinks that the food in Washington State is a lot more spicier, a lot more flavorful. And that specific term, sazon, is it's codified. It's extremely codified, and it's a traditional word that we use for our parents' cooking. However, in his statement, he made it sound, it does come off as, he prefers American food. Later on, we do find out, upon doing the research, I did find out that this interview actually happened pretty early on during their stay in Mexico City. So they stated that they hadn't really tried a lot of food out there, and also that they had lost their brother. So the two younger ones really look up to their brother, and they stated that because he was taken away while he had to wait for his visa approval, they kind of already had this negative connotation of Mexico, which I think also does not give them the excuse for that, because if you have a negative connotation of a location that is representative of a culture that you are profiting off of, I just don't think that that's okay. I do have the interview here for you guys. However, it is all in Spanish. So I may be adding some captions to this later, or just some translation here for you guys. I'm not really that experienced in adding captions to video, so hopefully I can give you guys some supplementary text along with the annotated bibliography later on. And so there is a division of opinion here that we are seeing. There's much debate here. People are pretty upset about it, but at the same time, they don't, and it is this reaction that suggests that Mexicans will not accept certain types of Mexican Americans or Mexicans with transnational experience. And this term pocho, I remember being called that when I was younger, and it felt ugly. Like I've always hated that word. And actually, it's also to the point where I don't. I also don't like the term Chicana either. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I am Mexican American. My roots are Mexican, and I was raised in the United States of America. But I don't want to be called a pocho, and I've always um, that was something that was kind of instilled in me as a younger person, traveling to Mexico and be really, really wanting to be accepted by my family. So whenever I saw those comments, when I saw that initial interview that I showed you guys, um, posted by that content creator that focuses on food, it really reminded me of the dues I had to pay, and those biases that were actually instilled in me, as a Mexican American, and really like holding my culture in such high regard, to the point of knowing that I can't claim Mexican ethnicity because I grew up in a different country, but also knowing that growing up in a country that wasn't my family's motherland, so to speak, also created an othering effect in me as a person. And so I had to really think about this, and I asked people around me. The sharing of cultures has been happening since forever. Like we all, there is that idea that we become stronger together. So the idea of having everything so bifurcated and so divided and so compartmentalized really gives off a notion of prejudice and racism and xenophobia, as we've seen in a lot of these comments that were made about these music performers. This post right here, so they did get booed off stage in both Mexico as well as in California. This video right here shows them getting booed off stage, saying that they insulted the country that made them, pretty much, that allowed them to be a recognized platform, provided them that platform to be recognized. This one is in Spanish here, and it says unpopular opinion. So Mexicans like to refer to themselves as la raza, so the race. The race is kind of like taking a piss, so to speak. It's saying with this group behind a false patriotism that is only hiding classist racism, the intolerance towards the Chicano, and cynicism of recognizing that Chicano is Chicano because of the Mexican ancestors, because their Mexican ancestors failed them. And I guess that is what brings me back to this term that I don't identify as that, because I don't think that my Mexican ancestors failed me at all. And my Mexican family really instilled in me these values and practices of how to represent myself as a Hispanic woman in America. So I guess what we really should be paying attention to here is maybe these kids were ill prepared to be giving interviews, and maybe that is right from this person who stated that their Mexican ancestors kind of failed them a little bit on that. I do wanted to just bring another example up. I love Julia Child, and I remember watching her on PBS when I was a little kid, and really wishing that one day I learned how to cook. She does. The show was. I can't remember if the show was called The French Chef, but I know that she did kind of revolutionize the world of recipe books and also the world of cooking shows. But I really wanted to highlight this picture here, this scene here, because she's talking to her friend who is like her sister. They're talking about writing a book, right, for a recipe book, and Julia Child really wants to incorporate a bread recipe, and her French telling her like you can't do that, you can't add a bread recipe to a French cookbook. French housewives don't make bread, and I think it really illustrates this notion of Americans' ability to kind of think outside that box, right? Like, I'm not sure, like, it could be seen as offensive, right? Like, she's changing it. She calls it the French chef, as asked here, why do you call it the French chef? You're not French. And she says, well, because I cook French food, but at the same time, it's not really French food, because she makes all of these adaptions for the American housewife. It's supposed to be a book that should be transnational, right? I'm not too sure how well perceived she was in France with the French chef, but I just thought this was a really good example of how maybe that is just part of American culture, to kind of fuse and create those nodes in our phylogenetic cultural trees, to create a more inclusive society, because America is a melting pot, right? We have so many different cultures that we are exposed to on a daily basis. And is Julia Child appropriating French culture by calling herself the French chef? Or is she just appreciating it, changing it and making it more palatable for the American household? And those are just things that I was really wanting to explore with this presentation. McGrath states that no person or group can control and exclusively determine the meaning of any given cultural formation, and through this lens we can recognize the implications of the comments as proceed from both Mexicans and Mexican American populations. Their music is typified as regional Mexican. Ricker also touches on this further in chapter 6 of his book Ambient Rhetoric, where he highlights that the existence of social constructionism grants the world its reality that uses language as a primary means to access the world. And so when we think of this and think of those nodes that were created in the past by Selena, so Selena didn't speak Spanish at all. She sang in both English and Spanish, but it was known that she wasn't Mexican. She was Tex-Mex. She was something completely different, probably. And so this notion of these kids not being, going around and, be gaining fame and fortune from the representation of a Mexican culture that they are not a part of, really posits that question of how do we appropriately create those nodes in our cultural trees to allow for an evolution. We can't stay the same. Times change, especially now with technology, and with the ease of dissemination of knowledge. We have to remember that these bits and pieces that are given to us through social media are not always honest. There's a lot of more history that these group members have with the culture and the way that they've been raised here in America. Even though they're in America, their lifestyle could be seen as very analogous to any other the typical Mexican growing out in the country. There are some Mexicans that have never been to the country. They don't know what it's like to live, to hang out and pick fruit for a living or anything like that. So I think that it really does show the lack of understanding from both ends. The idea of somebody being transnational really opens up an exploration for really wanting to merge and create these bridges of understanding, and really trying to break down these barriers that may result in stagnation. I definitely would love to hear what you guys think about this topic. I thought it was very interesting, and it really made me introspect and see why was I so offended. And I don't think I'm as offended anymore. I think so. Please let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for your time.